Hi everybody, it's Pat Steve, Spiceheads Media, and welcome to the channel, folks.
Each year, fraudsters steal £20 billion from the public purse.
He must have seen an opportunity to line his own pockets and took it.
This is money that should be going into the public pot and spent on essential services for us all.
Money that's going away from patient care is money that's not available for, in some cases, vulnerable patients to be treated.
It's the role of specialist investigators to track down these fraudsters.
We have powers to look into people's bank accounts.
Bring them to justice.
The judge actually said it was the worst case of benefit fraud he'd seen in 30 years on the bench.
And claw back the money they've stolen from us.
We can still go back to him in order to recover the full amount, and we will do so.
This series meets the men and women across the UK intent on catching the criminals stealing from the system. Today, a duo from Leeds are suspected of swindling the state to fund their champagne lifestyle.
He had got a jet for him and his wife, a private jet to fly them both over to Paris to buy wallpaper, bespoke wallpaper.
Whilst most of us are happy to earn our wages and pay our taxes, a tiny handful of criminals are intent on ripping all of us off, dipping their hands into honest taxpayers' cash for their own benefit. Some of the most brazen target the very tax collection system itself. They'll happily use fraud, forgery, and lies to get their hands on public cash. And tax evasion in the UK is estimated at over £4 billion a year.
They're lining their own pockets with the money that should be supplying the country with those public services that everybody needs.
In 2010, one case came to the attention of tax inspectors involving a disability bed company, stolen identities, and a self-styled U-boat captain.
The loss to the public purse was in the region of £1 million.
In August 2010, HMRC investigators were conducting a routine visit into a business run by Richard Williams from Workington in Cumbria, which purported to sell specially adapted beds to the disabled.
One of our compliance officers had made arrangements to go out and do a VAT visit to check the books and records to make sure that everything was actually legitimate, something we do all the time. When they got there, they started looking at the paperwork, and it became quite obvious that the documentation that was being presented to support the claims that had been made, there was something seriously wrong with it. And so they then needed to delve a bit further. The documents didn't even look real to them. And so they realised that something wasn't quite right here. You know, these people are making the visits every single day. They know what they're expecting to see, and it really, really didn't feel right.
Williams's case was swiftly referred to the Criminal Investigations Department of HMRC, and his paperwork seized for further inspection. But they quickly discovered that not only was his young wife, Laurel Howarth, also involved in selling disability beds, but there was more than just one business.
Once we started to investigate, it became obvious that it wasn't just one company that these people had been involved in. We found 4 different companies.
Williams and Howarth's businesses claimed to sell adjustable beds to the disabled, on which the disabled customer paid no value-added tax, known as VAT. This meant Williams and Howarth were allowed to apply to HMRC for VAT refunds on every bed they'd sold.
They said that they were buying them from one particular supplier, at which point they were paying VAT, but then they were supplying them to disabled customers when no VAT was actually chargeable, and so they were claiming the VAT back from us that they said they had actually paid.
But HMRC's Criminal Investigation Unit weren't convinced that all the VAT reclaims were 100% legitimate, and decided to involve the Crown Prosecution Service. Specialist fraud prosecutor Aslan Khan was consulted on the evidence HMRC had gathered.
As the evidence unfolded, we found an elaborate system of sales invoices. Witness statements were obtained from the suppliers, and likewise, statements from end-use customers.
We were trying to look at the paperwork to see if any of it was actually genuine. We spoke to a number of people who they claimed to have sold the beds to. We spoke to the people they claimed had supplied the beds. None of them had ever heard of the businesses or the couple. It became apparent that everything that they were saying they had bought, they had never bought.
They held details of sales to customers with their names and addresses, presumably picked out from a telephone directory we'll never know.
So it became clear to us that the whole thing was just a simple web of lies to enable them to claim VAT that they weren't entitled to.
Effectively, they were cooking the books. The businesses that were set up were no more than fraud factories.
Williams had also gone to extraordinary lengths to make it appear the businesses were actually operational.
The accounts also purported to be legitimate in that mileage was being recorded, as well as receipts being retained for meals and overnight stays in hotels.
With Williams and Howarth's blatant crime exposed, the team still had reams of documents to trawl through.
There was clearly a high degree of planning that went into this through the sophisticated forgery of documentation over a prolonged period of time.
Because of the number of businesses that were involved, the amount of paperwork that they'd faked, in effect, and the number of claims that they'd made, it made it quite a complicated web for us to unravel.
And when HMRC made further checks on the paperwork from Richard Williams and Laurel Howarth's businesses, there was even more damning evidence when they contacted the company which had supplied the template invoice books.
The books that they were using to actually as their invoices, their receipts that said they were giving to their customers, we actually found out that some of the invoices that had been written in those books predated the date the books were actually printed, because when we spoke to the printers, they were able to tell us these books were made on this date, and when we looked at the books, some of the invoices were actually dated a few months before.
Later, investigators become suspicious that there is more to this fraud than bogus sales invoices, and suspect a case of identity theft.
They were talking to Richard Williams, and he just didn't seem to be who they thought he was going to be. So they suspected that actually this person they were speaking to was pretending to be Richard Williams.
Back in the northwest of England, HMRC and the Crown Prosecution Service had joined forces, suspecting Richard Williams and his wife, Laurel Howarth, were running a scam through their disability beds business, which seemed to be intent on defrauding the public purse. The investigators had discovered paperwork allowing Williams and Howarth to reclaim thousands of pounds of VAT on beds. It appeared they'd never actually bought or sold. But with 4 different businesses implicated, HMRC investigators needed to establish whether it was only Williams and Howarth involved.
We started to find paperwork and documentation that referred to 4 different businesses. All of them seemed to be running for about 2 years, and then they were closed down and a new company would be started in a new name, mostly aliases.
The team looked closer at the different names being used to set up the companies. Digging into the background of Richard Williams, specialist fraud prosecutor Aslan Khan made a surprising discovery.
It's believed that Williams first changed his name in or around 2009 by Deepening.
Williams was born Stephen Howarth, but took on the name of a friend, Richard Williams, in order to set up his latest business, the discount mobility store. But not only did the fake Richard Williams adopt his friend's name, he also used personal documents of the real Richard Williams without his permission to complete the identity fraud.
Richard Williams was then able to set up a VAT account with HMRC and open up personal and business bank accounts in that name.
Not only had Richard Williams stolen an identity to create one of his businesses, his wife Laurel Howarth had done the same in order to set up another disability bed business.
Laurel Howarth had stolen the identity of an innocent party. She used the details to set up the business Adjust-A-Bed.
And HMRC made an incredible discovery when they interviewed the innocent party.
She knew nothing about that business and also knew nothing about a driving licence that had been obtained from DVLA fraudulently, which Laurel Howarth then used as identity to open up personal and business bank accounts.
With 4 businesses running at different times under different names, HMRC had their work cut out to discover exactly how much money Williams and Howarth had stolen.
We looked at the different businesses to see what claims they'd made, what money had been repaid to them, and we started to pull everything together so that we got that bigger picture of exactly what was happening with this couple.
After meticulous work, the team was shocked to discover the extent of their sophisticated scam.
Overall, the fraud spanned a 5-year period between 2005 and 2010, and the loss to the public purse was in the region of £1 million.
Howarth and Williams' fraud empire had spanned 4 towns across the northwest of England, and the breakdown of theft from each company stunned even the hardened HMRC team. Sleepability.co.uk, run by Williams from Blackpool between 2005 and 2006, under his old name of Stephen Howarth, stole over £340,000. Between 2007 and 2008, Orthomatic, based in Lancaster, was run by Laurel Howarth and nicked over £400,000. The discount mobility store run by Williams from 2009 to 2010 in Workington took over £250,000 of taxpayers' cash and had an £80,000 VAT reclaim withheld by HMRC. Finally, Adjust-A-Bed in Penrith, which Laurel Howarth had tried to start under a stolen identity, was closed by HMRC before she could steal anything. In total, they tried to steal £1,097,515 through fraudulent VAT reclaims. And now it was time for Williams and his partner to face justice.
He was arrested in January 2012 in Leeds on a barge that he had converted into a German U-boat. By that time, he was calling himself Captain Williams and was running this converted barge as a type of tourist attraction. After Captain Williams was arrested, Laurel Howarth came to us voluntarily and was interviewed at a police station in Leeds. Both of them were interviewed under caution at a police station, but they both gave no comment interviews.
Despite their non-cooperation with investigators, more details came to light of what they were spending their stolen cash on.
Williams lived an eccentric and extravagant lifestyle, joined by Howarth, and the money that they stole from the taxpayer was spent on kitting out a converted narrowboat, which he advertised as a replica German World War II submarine U-boat, complete with naval artifacts, giving himself the title of Captain Williams.
Williams told the press that he'd spent the money on holidays, luxury goods and drink. He also told them of a trip where he had got a jet for him and his wife, a private jet to fly them both over to Paris to buy wallpaper, bespoke wallpaper.
Williams had enjoyed his ill-gotten gains and even revelled in his near-celebrity status as the owner of a fake U-boat.
Here's my top 10 tips for life. Live life to the max, in the fast lane. Marry young and have as many children as you can. It's good for the tax credits, tax credits, tax credits.
It was evident that Williams was a self-publicist, a man who enjoyed posting his promotional videos that he'd filmed on board his vessel to various social media sites. He seemingly modelled himself on Captain Birdseye, very much enjoying the attention he and his mock U-boat received as he toured the canals of Britain dressed in his commander's uniform.
But their years of high living and cavorting on canals were over, and in 2013 two separate trials commenced for Richard Williams and Laurel Howarth.
We're here at Manchester Crown Court, which is where the case was heard in the early part of 2015. Howarth and Williams were charged with cheating the public revenue and also with tax fraud. Howarth pleaded guilty to 3 charges of VAT fraud. Williams pleaded guilty to 3 charges of cheating the public revenue and fraud.
But it was all too little too late for the fraudsters.
They were sentenced in April 2015. Howarth received 20 months imprisonment and Williams received 4 years and 8 months imprisonment.
But despite the courts handing down significant jail time for the pair, HMRC are still determined to get the money back for the taxpayer. Confiscation proceedings are ongoing to try and claw back at least some of the £1 million Williams and Howarth stole.
This case sends out a very clear message to anybody who's tempted to commit tax fraud. We will investigate you, we will bring you before the courts, and you may end up in prison.
Pizza every Monday and spag bol every Wednesday. One family is stuck in a food rut and need Greg and Chris's help to be more experimental. Eat well for less at 8 o'clock.
So stay safe everybody. Fat Steve, Spiceheads Media.